Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. And as always on a Friday, sometimes with a slide, sometimes not. Today is a non-slide day. We start with a small but important contribution of a land recognition and acknowledgement. Before we go there this morning, I really want to bring your attention to a campaign that I came across yesterday, thanks to a friend of mine who sent it to me. And it's the Moose Hide campaign, which is a grassroots movement of Indigenous and non-Indigenous men and boys who are standing up against violence towards women and children. In order to be a part of the campaign, the Awareness Day was yesterday, but this campaign runs 365. You can go to their website, which Craig is going to pop into the chat for us, and buy a moose hide pin. Now, if moose hide is medicinal in Indigenous culture, if that's not your thing, there are animal-free moose hide pins too. But the intention is that if one pin can spark 5 different conversations about the commitment to honor and respect and protect women in your life and speak out against gender-based and domestic violence, then it will be doing a good job. So when you order your pins, you get one for you, and the aim is carry a few with you so that you can spread the pins and spread another set of 5 conversations. So mark your calendars, they send the pins out all year. They're absolutely free, and it's a really healthy way to be a part of some very important organizations, recognitions, reconciliations, and the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Girls and Women and the call for justice. Today in Calgary, the 3 of us are joining you from Calgary. SAIT's home campus is up on the hill in Calgary, and we would like to acknowledge that SAIT is situated on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy. Today, that area encompasses our Indigenous people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. As always, such a great job of making it meaningful. So I appreciate that, Jenny. Folks, we are very fortunate to be joined by Erin Corbett this morning. As Jenny and I were figuring out who and why we wanted to talk to people on these leadership conversations, Erin rose very quickly to the top of the list. Tremendously interesting background from being a classically trained opera singer to spending time in fundraising with Calgary Opera, WordFest, and Hospice Calgary. Was one of Calgary's top 40 under 40. Has experienced, and I want to come to this at some point, Erin, because it was intentional in your bio.
We'll see.
Professional mediocrity. I think there's an interesting exploration in there. But nothing mediocre at all about Erin today as the head of school and CEO of West Island College, who we've been working with for the past while, helping them develop and grow their leaders. And so, Erin, pleased to have you here this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's humbling and it's fun. Thank you.
Yeah, no, looking forward to this. So we're going to kick this off with a question that we ask everybody on these Friday mornings, and that is, what does leading beyond any title mean to you?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and every time I think about the question, I land on a different answer. And I think what that brought me to was at its base level, and what I always understood leadership to be from my early days of being in this very privileged work, was the importance of meeting the moment in front of you. And so working in education, I have found myself rooting through dumpsters for children's orthotics. I have cleaned up vomit. I have led schools through natural disasters like the floods in 2013 here in Calgary. And of course, most recently, all of us led through a pandemic. And I don't think any leader would have thought that within their title was collecting private health records or managing PPE or shutdowns. So I think it really is at its base level about meeting that need, whatever it is, and it's evolving. But as I thought more about the question, really over the course of this year in my work with SAIT, I think I also reflect a lot right now on the increasing complexity within leadership roles and the many layers that exist for us now, and the impacts of those layers on the world outside of our organizations. And there's a profound responsibility, I think, that we have to understand that how we lead, how we show up, how we participate with people in our organization, any stakeholders, any constituents, has an impact outside of our organization. In education, from my lens, everything that I say, everything that I do can have an impact on future generations. And it can shape how they think, how they feel, what they think is appropriate, what they think isn't appropriate, how we show up in society. And I want to preface this by saying I recognize I am a grain of sand in a globe of beaches. But I think that if it's one person that something I do or say impacts within my organization that takes that forward as a belief or a negative or a positive experience, I don't know what that one person's going to do. I don't know how they're going to show up as a citizen. So I think it's incumbent upon us to be incredibly thoughtful that our impact goes far beyond the spheres of our immediate influence and can have impact on the future of our society. And I think now more than ever, that's a really essential conversation we need to be having as leaders and on our leadership teams, and an important thing that we need to carry with us all the time in this role. That's where I am today.
Wow. As she drops the microphone.
I was going to say, I need a screenshot of your face just then, Craig. It's awesome. Erin, oh wow, okay. That was huge and so much to talk about. I wrote down that one of the first things that you said, Mike, cool, we're going here next. And now I have like 5 different places where we could bounce off there. So as you've heard me say before, thank you for your thinkfulness. And so much truth. I'm going to go right back down to the first thing I wrote, actually, which is meeting the moment. Because when I think of somebody in your space as a leader, and some of the phenomenal leaders that work for you, but anybody as a leader, that ability to meet the moment. And when we think about someone with, as you put it, your lens on, but what do your moments look like? Like your parents, we're a really happy crew all the time. We come with all the good stuff, I'm sure. And my children don't go to school, by the way, that's just generic. And you have staff who also, there's so many different perspectives, and kids and all the rest. So just for anybody who's thinking about leadership or who is a leader, like those really cool refreshers, what do you do to allow yourself to meet the moment? Because the number of transitions that you must go through in a day is quite incredible.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's moments big and small. And I think the larger your stakeholder group and the more human-centered your organizations are, often the more of those moments you have. I think one of the things I would say is, I'm going to steal this from one of the leaders on the team here at West Island College, who's brilliant. And she talks about small, consistent actions. And I think when we're meeting the moment, those small, consistent actions about who we are as an individual, how we will meet people in a moment, regardless of that moment, those small, consistent actions over time allows us to show up in a way that's not only authentic, but consistent with the experience that others have with you. And so when I think about that, I think about the importance of some moments are joyful and some moments are challenging and some moments are sad, and knowing how to show up in that moment is ultimately, it shouldn't be a shock to the individual or the group that you're faced with. And so I think it really is a little bit about consistency, who we are. For myself as well, this is a really tactical ground level piece, but it's about how I check myself before I step into that moment. Yeah. And where am I in this moment before I can show up for somebody else in this moment? And so it is about having the sense, which I don't always have, to take even that heartbeat of a second to have a sip of water, check in, where's my breathing? What is my gut telling me right now? What am I carrying and where before I can be there for somebody else? So that's something I practice all the time, is taking that moment before I can show up for the moment. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling now, Jenny. You might want to refocus me.
Well, I'm going to hand it over to Craig. There was so much in your first answer, but yes, tactical. Yes, I took you into the weeds, but how useful is that? We can all use that. Like, and you're going to get quoted. Take the moment to meet the moment. Brilliant.
I literally just wrote that down.
You did? Good. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, that's all. I think it's really valuable.
Yeah, and Erin, I think these small tactical, practical pieces are what a lot of leaders are looking for. We can sit here and talk about psychological safety and all the other ideas, not to diminish them, but one of the reasons we wanted to lean into these conversations with leaders like yourself is to learn what are the things that you do on a regular basis. And so, taking a moment before you meet the moment, I think that is really that's solid stuff. That is a quote that I think we'll see come out following this. But you talked about consistency, right? And I think sometimes it is the boring stuff that leads to really good, solid, strong, foundational leadership. Let's face it, consistency, persistence are the boring things that you just do on a regular, boring, right? So,
yeah.
But part of being a leader too is that, and Jenny, I've talked about this before, is that you're also a person, you're a messy human being as well, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, see? Right. And so how do you, and we've all been there as leaders where we want to take that moment, but sometimes that moment is a little too short and you don't check yourself quite enough. And so I'm curious how you handle those times where, perhaps the moment passed you and you have to go back and try and recreate the moment or address the moment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you've said it right there.
Okay.
When part that's done, moving on.
Yeah.
I think there's, it's essential that every conversation, every interaction we have on some level, I mean, to different extents, obviously, because there can be hundreds a day. But there's a reflection, that check-in with self to say, was that a positive interaction? Might have just been fleeting. A great one that I picked up from Jenny this year is, when you ask someone how they are you stopping to ask them how they are so that you're going to actually wait for their answer, or is it basically just the flyby? And I feel like this is what I need to say to you. So those are little check-ins that I have and reflections of myself. But when I have the more meaningful moments with an individual or a team, and I do the reflection, sometimes, in the moment, you haven't taken the time for the moment, but it is about going back. And I think it's always on us to do the repair. It's always on us to reach back out. And even if another person wasn't able to meet the moment in the way we might have been able to meet the moment, it's our responsibility to reach back out and do the repair so that we can try again. And that builds trust, that builds safety, it builds confidence that it's okay to not have shown up for the moment, on both sides. And I think for me, that's what I try to do the most is I go back, I own what I need to own always. I apologize when I need to apologize. Sometimes I apologize when maybe somewhere inside me, I don't think I have to apologize. But usually I do need to. And if only because if someone else wasn't able to show up on some level, I probably didn't create the environment for them to feel like they could take their moment before our moment. So I think it's about the repair. I think it's about going back. resetting expectations, and trying again. It's all building relationships, I think.
I like the I like the ownership part in there. I chuckled at the apology because through and through you are a Canadian, Erin, at the end of the day. Canadians are really good at apologizing.
Yeah.
That made me smile. But it's, you know, it takes me back. Actually, I said I'd written 5 things down at the beginning, and I think what we're talking about here is the impact, like the impact of the leader, the impact of relationships. There are so many impacts that we have, and what I liked when you were speaking right at the very beginning, and I don't think these were your words necessarily, but it's the ripple effect of those impacts and how we speak to somebody or how we repair that piece. It's all about the relationship within there and then what happens next with that. And I really like the recognition that, you know, what happens in the day then happens at home, then happens
exactly
at somebody's club or band or wherever they go to next after school, like just into the community. And schools are real hubs of communities too. So for your staff and for your pupils and everybody and anyone, that absolutely is an impact and a ripple effect. One of the things I love about West Island College, and just in case anybody missed it at the beginning, we have been working with West Island College for 8 months now, I think, close to.
Yeah.
We just had a nice little graduation, but the culture is phenomenal. And you don't get good culture, especially in a senior leadership team. Like we see lots and lots of intact teams. And so can we chat a little bit about culture and culture within your team, but then how that spreads to the school? I'll drop that and take it where you like. We'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, I mean, culture is, I mean, it's everything at the end of the day. I think everyone knows that. There's lots of books that get sold on that. So it's clearly, it clearly resonates with people. I think about my work over different organizations throughout my career. And what I have come to learn is that my approach to culture at each school, there are sort of tenets that I follow, but they are largely about me and how I want the community to know me, to see me. But each culture has a context that is unique, and to enter, to become, to be welcomed into, to be invited into another culture when you join an organization, like I've been able to do here at West Island College, is to, again, meet that culture where it is and listen and learn. And I think of culture maintenance as well as culture shift or change as sort of the notion of how do you eat the elephant? It's just one bite at a time, because it is enormous. And the more complex an organization, the more complex the culture can be. And there's many cultures within the bigger culture. And so for me, I work a lot with my immediate team to say, what are the rules of engagement that we live by? What are our, you talk about it in your rapid fire, what are our non-negotiables? And how do we hold each other and ourselves to account when we are in this space together, serving others? And then how do we work with our teams to do that too? And how will they work with their teams to do that too? And then how does that in our organization filter down into classrooms? And so it becomes that the momentum over time, it might be a heavier, I've been using boat metaphors lately, so forgive me, but it might be a heavier row at first, where there's fewer of you trying to get that momentum of the boat moving forward in the water. But over time, as more teams rise and understand what those non-negotiables are, what that unspoken language of how we come to this place every day and be, then our boat starts to move more swiftly and more smoothly, and we have more people rowing in that same direction. And I think, you know, when there's disruption in the water, which there there is. That's normal. It's
Yeah.
human, and it's life. It doesn't completely send your boat upward on end. You know, you can still keep momentum. You can regroup. And so I think it really is, to come back to what I said before, and I'm stealing it from somebody else, but those small, consistent actions that we do over time that build a culture, that maintain a culture. And then what we permit is what continues to allow your culture to rise to its highest level of being. Or if we're permitting things that are not aligned with what we say we believe, it drags a lot of people down. So that happens very quickly. And so I think when I work and think about culture, it is a rigorous, never-ending pursuit. And it is of primary importance to everything I do. Because if we don't have it, if everyone's not on the same page, it makes everything else we're trying to accomplish harder. And it creates more challenge and more questions and more insecurity if we aren't all on that same page. It's big. It's big, and probably the thing that keeps me up most.
Yeah, it's it has to be intentional, right? And so what I'm curious about, and we actually, great minds think alike here, just some question popped in here, the rules of engagement, right? So again, getting down to some of those tactical, practical pieces, can you give us some examples of the rules of engagement that you and your team use?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, I think, yeah, it's, I mean, there's many, and I think that your rules of engagement are often need to be defined by you and your teams based on what it is that you need and what it is that you're looking for. But for us right now, I think we're all working hard to determine how can we, as an organization, engage in meaningful, critical conversations about the things that we want to see, and not just that we want them, but what others need in order for us to live them. It's easy for us to say we expect a safe and trusting culture in our organization. But if we're not asking others outside of our small team, what do they need to feel like this is a safe and trusting culture? Don't assume they think it is.
Yeah.
And don't assume that they know how to get there. I think for us, it's about asking our teams, are we where we want to be? And if we're not, how do you think we might get there? Or what are the things that you need that might help get you there? So some of the tools I employ are things like Ask Me Anything. So we do a confidential email submission where anyone on staff can submit questions anonymously to me at my level, and they can be about anything. And they are sometimes very challenging. And what I do is I take the exact question in a quote and I populate a PowerPoint presentation, and then I do a video where I bring up every single question that's been asked and I answer it to the best of my ability in the most honest and transparent way I can. And when I first started here 2 years ago, I got, I think, 95 questions in the first year, and this year we're at 20. And so, you know, that statistic tells me that, you know, we're starting to build some trust where hopefully people are asking more questions or they're getting more answers in a way where they don't need to show up anonymously. Yep. But there's still that opportunity. We have one-to-one meetings with people where they come in. What's in our blind spot? What don't we see that you want us to know about? So it's connection points, anonymous as well as not. Again, meeting people where they are and giving them lots of different ways to engage in building that culture that make them feel comfortable, but still ensure that their voices are heard.
Yeah.
There is,
sorry, go ahead, Jenny. Nope. Sorry. Yes. We're going to be let's be very Canadian. Everybody say sorry right now. There we go. There we go. Okay. Jenny, go ahead.
Not saying it. So, but no, what I really, that was full in the chat. Thank you, everybody. That's awesome. But you know what I really like there, Erin, and I think this stands out too, is that ability to agree as your team. Okay, here's our rules of engagement, as you put it, non-negotiables, whatever we want to call them. Like, this is what we stand for. And I really like what you said before too, in terms of, and we will reward this, almost use reward lightly, but we're going to watch out for the things that drag us away from it, because that's
Yes.
equally critical in our conversation. And then moving on, how does the next team see that playing out? How does that work for them? What does that look like for them? And when the rules of engagement are such at your level that a team can go out and say, okay, this is how we'll play. And that comes back to, like you said, there are mini cultures within the big culture, and that's okay as long as they all align. And the beauty in that is asking the other people how they see that. And I think that, again, that's something that we can all take away, because so often, you know, culture is, as you put it, it's how I would like it to be. And then we forget that bit. So then we just press how I would like it to be, how I would like it to be. And that doesn't work very well. So I really appreciate the ownership that was coming through there as well. Craig, I did cut you off though, so I will apologize for that. Did you have another question?
Carry on. You touched a lot of it right there.
And I'm curious, just because we have the time, and I've heard your team, you weren't there, but I've heard your team talk about how effective you are in critical conversations, and goodness knows you must have a ton of them on any given day, whether it is with parents, with students, with staff members as well. So when you look at whether you call it difficult, critical, vibrant conversations, and we've got that moment piece. Okay, so we've got that moment before we go in. What's your go-to within holding those difficult conversations? Like, what does that look like in Erin's book?
It depends on the nature of the conversation. If it's a conversation where I am also potentially emotionally charged, or it's going to also be difficult for me because I'm bringing something to it. I've often used a tool that I got from a book by Cy Wakeman, Reality-Based Leadership, and it's an older book, 2010 maybe, and it's very practical. But there was a tool in there that I picked up in one of my first years as a head of school, that was, before you go into a conversation where you might be bringing some of your own baggage, you write out everything that's going on with that conversation, everything that's going on with the situation that you're going to be discussing. And then you take a highlighter and you highlight only the facts. Everything that you perceive, everything that you believe, everything that you feel does not get highlighted. The only things that your highlighter touches are the things that happened or the things that are factual. And then you rewrite that. It's time consuming, but what it actually is doing is helping you, to use Jenny's language with us, it's say your brain to go from here back to here and to regroup around what it is that we're actually talking about. What is it that we actually need to talk through? And it's not removing the emotion, it's just putting it where it needs to be. It's not saying your feelings about a situation don't matter. It's just putting them where they need to be. And when you can start a conversation with the facts and come to an agreement about what we're talking about, it immediately brings a difficult conversation to a more level playing field. We both know why we're here. We both agree why we're here. And if there's disagreement in the facts, you've got concrete things to work through and to talk about. Once you come to agreement on the facts, then you can start to layer in. You've built a more trusting foundation for this conversation. You might be able to take it the next step to say, I need you to understand from my perspective, when this happened, this is how I felt. That's when you can start to ladder your conversation. I was doing this, but actually I think it's going deeper, because you're building greater relationship when you can start to share those vulnerabilities. But you can't start from there because it makes people defensive and it starts a conversation in an emotional place. When I'm doing, I love vibrant conversation. I like that one. where I'm facilitating conflict between two individuals, that's a different approach. And I think in those approaches, it again is what is the same is it's incredibly structured. This is how our conversation is going to go. This is what we're here to accomplish. You're each going to have an opportunity to give your side of whatever's happening, uninterrupted by the other. And at the end of each statement, I always reiterate what I think they've said so that they can say, yes, that is accurate, or no, this is what you misunderstood this. Again, brings everyone to a foundation of we're meeting here. Everyone has the same goal. And we now are at a base understanding of what each person's position is. Do we agree? Yes. Take it to the next stage. So it's a very structured, and I keep time limits on things sometimes. I keep really strict notes. And if someone is interrupting another person, I stop and I say, this is their time to talk. So it's a little bit like being a teacher in the classroom when you're working with students. And it sounds, when I talk about it, a little bit perhaps surface, but it's remarkable. It's remarkable how much further you get with people when you provide that structure. They know they're going to have uninterrupted time to share their experience. And then at the end, you have accountabilities. What are the things we're going to do? What do we all agree? And what's our follow-up conversation? That's the next essential piece in those conversations, is even if you feel like everything's tied up really nicely, always do the follow-up and arrange the follow-up at the end of that meeting. Okay, let's regroup, even if it's for 5 minutes in 2 weeks' time, to make sure what you've come to an agreement on, or to make sure what we've worked through today is still in a good place. So those are a couple of the things that I do in terms of tactical approaches. And again, meeting the moment. Another book I really like that has tips. And if you're going into a situation where you're like, I don't really know, or this is a new situation for me, sometimes I just like to flip through. And the other one I use a lot is Crucial Conversations, and it's by a number of people, but it's orange. And that's been a good resource for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
But at the end of the day, I think it's really important just to remember, like, you're dealing with a person.
Yeah.
And showing up with humanity and compassion and a willingness to just listen generously and be in that moment with them, that gets you further than any tactical tool. We are people, and people have bad days, and bad days can be forgivable. So I think at the core, that's really the most success I've had, is remembering that I'm in front of a person right now, and I didn't experience what they've experienced in the way they experienced it. And so what they experienced is real for them, and you have to honor that in whatever conversation you're having.
Wow.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
So I'm about 3 pages into notes here, which is fantastic.
This has
been this has been a leadership
Craig,
therapy
you say
session
that
for
to
me.
everybody.
No, I don't actually.
You know what, Erin, he's not lying either. I see them. Like, he's not. Yeah, it's true.
But I want to come back to, and bear with me. This is going to weave together into a question at the end. Jenny's smiling because she knows I will get there. So again, I'm going to go back to your bio when you were talking about professional mediocrity, and what you just talked about here in the last little bit around some of these very tactical and practical approaches, writing out your conversations. There is intentionality and discipline inherent in all of that. And with that as well, there's a degree of self-awareness that has to be there to know that I need to do this. I need to be intentional. I need to be disciplined. And where I'm going with this, Erin, is that as leaders, we have day jobs. We have roles and responsibilities and accountabilities to the job, right? And so we need to get those things done. And I think perhaps often where leaders struggle is that the day job takes front stage, and we don't carve out the time to be intentional, disciplined, self-reflective on being a leader. And so what I'm curious about is, how do you do that? Like, how do you structure your time, yourself to be able to go, okay, I've got a role as head of school and CEO, but I also need to make sure I'm continuing to sharpen my saw. You want to bring Covey back into this. There's a name I haven't used in a long time.
That's an excellent question. And I'm more successful at it. I'm more successful at it sometimes, sometimes, and then less successful at it than in others. Like May, for example, I am not doing a good job of it. But
you're only 12 days in.
I know, that's what's terrifying. Helped me is learning alongside my team and not just making it a solo pursuit. I have carved out time to coach myself with extraordinary individuals, Jason Dorland and Robin Marr I've been working with for a number of years. I'm a part of an amazing CEO executive group that give me fantastic feedback. I meet them a few times a year. But what I did with SATE this year alongside my team has been a pretty profound shift. And I always find that when I'm learning alongside those that I work with, I make the greatest strides personally, and I make the greatest strides professionally, and I make the greatest strides for the organization that I lead. And I made a commitment last fall or last summer that our team here was going to leave the school a number of times over the course of the year for full days, knowing that 9 times out of 10, everything's going to be fine because we have amazing people here at the school who are still there, 92 of them, in fact. So we were all going to come and we were going to put our phones away with the exception of one person who could be contacted if it was necessary. And we were going to commit to this work together. And my team was extraordinary. And I think gave everything of themselves to show up in that moment. And I did it with them. And so I think making that commitment at the beginning of the year, that's multi-day, an extended commitment, has been very effectual for us, as opposed to the one-offs that are great. You go, you do the session, but then you leave and the workbook or the notes sit in the notebook or on the shelf or in a file folder. And it's hard to come back and practice what it was that you were talking about. And so this year has been particularly powerful. Learning as a team, we can have those conversations. There's 9 other people that can bring it up around a meeting table. Well, in our case, when we were at SATE last week, this is what we were talking about. How might that apply here? Or somebody else who's also now taken up coaching on our team. I've been talking about this with my coaches. How does that apply to what we're doing here? And that's been pretty exciting, pretty profound. But I will say, I am terrible about filling my calendar with things that take me away from some of the most important things I should be doing, and including learning and including being there. Just yesterday, 2 days ago, I was supposed to go into a classroom to watch a poetry slam. It was in my calendar and all sorts of competing priorities came up and I missed it. And I went back the next day and apologized to the kids because I just felt terrible about not being there. And I do the same thing with my learning. So it's a work in progress. But one of the tools that I do use is I take advantage of the Microsoft Outlook adding focus time to your calendar. Yeah. And I add it in, And that actually has been really, really helpful for me. Every so often, some months more than others, I overwrite the focus time, or someone else in the school overwrites the focus time. But it is giving me an hour or two, a couple, 3 days a week for me to really focus on something that I want to do, whether it's reading or work, whatever. So that has been a tool that has worked for me this year so far.
Great.
Most days.
Great. I hear you.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's not going to happen unless we make it happen.
Yeah.
Like we can't wait.
You have to. Yeah.
I'm going to add to Wick's journey and say there was a little bit of fun in there too. Like if there is a team that knows how to laugh, your team knows how to laugh a lot.
Yes, they are awesome. They bring joy every day.
I know that we're not allowed to ask you to sing, but they do enjoy a little bit of music too, yourself included.
Yes, they do.
That's a different conversation for a different day as well. Excuse me. So Erin, we've reached that point. We're almost at 8:45, and our promise to everybody who joins us is we'll have you out of here before 9 o'clock. So you can take the moment to meet the moment at 9 o'clock. So new tagline. There we go. Courtesy of Erin. So we have some rapid fire questions. And funnily enough, we've done some of these in the classroom too. So you are well versed on a lot of this. Yes. But it's a curious journey, I think, as to how we get to them as leaders. So today, and actually talking of today, anybody out there, be kind to teachers in May, please, and June. Remember those days.
Yeah, they're working hard right now. It's a heavy lift.
It's madness. You don't understand it till you're in it. Anyways, for you today, here where you're at, what are your 3 non-negotiables that you hold yourself and your folks around you to on a daily basis?
Yeah. Number 1 is honesty and integrity. I think not being afraid to have conversations, not being afraid to be honest about how you feel about things, but also simply just being honest about where you are and how you're doing and what you need. So that's essential. Loyalty to team, loyalty to the business or your cause, and loyalty to yourself, I think, is also really important and is a non-negotiable. Loyalty to the values that you hold, loyalty to your own personal integrity. When you feel like you're acting outside of that, I don't think you show up in the best possible way because you can't. And the last one for me is a bit twee maybe, but kindness. It's a non-negotiable. It is not hard to be nice to people. It is not hard to smile at them and say hello. It's not hard to treat everyone in front of you like the human being that they are, even if they have a different opinion than you. And those are my 3, laced with probably other rambles.
Yeah, those are great. What's the one piece of advice you would give folks who have joined us today that they could walk away with to use to develop their own leadership capabilities?
I think the most important thing that I have learned is to build your team, your team at work, those trusted individuals that you work with day in and day out. Build that team, commit to that team, have fun with that team, share yourself with that team, build your team at home, your friends, your family, those important shoulders that you lean on outside of your workday, who know you, know the deep you, know the heart you. Take time to build that team, don't ignore them, and also build the team within. And I think that that's something I've really tried to work on this year. I had a long-standing, what Jenny's taught me to understand as a basement belief, those sort of deeply rooted belief systems that we learn from a very young age or an early time in our life, or even from foundational moments, that taking care of myself was very secondary and often didn't even make the list. And that's what a strong leader did. You made sure everyone else was okay, but you didn't bother with making sure you were okay. And I've been working hard on trying to embrace the notion of self-care and not cringe at the words themselves. And it's making a difference, just getting active and role modeling that for the young people that I'm in front of all the time, as well as making sure I role model. It's important to get out and exercise during the day. During your workday, you don't have to take your lunch hour, and that's okay. And I permit that because I'm doing that. So I think that would be my advice. Build your team, but know that you've got a lot of teams, including the one that you're carrying on your feet every day.
Very cool. Okay, so I know that you were a leader long before you were a leader at West Island College. So you can go back here as far as you want to go back. You can go back to yesterday if you like. Where were you as a leader? Where are you as a leader? And where will you be as a leader?
I don't think where I was and where I am are wildly different. I think I've always been pretty authentic, and I've always loved the work, but I think I was blissfully naive, and I miss that time some days. That you just don't know what you don't know, and it's in reflection, it's a glorious time. And I definitely, as a leader before, I was armored with some serious basement belief systems. The leader I am now, I'm learning, and I'm always learning. And the work that I've done over the recent period of time in my leadership journey has helped me reflect to see some really core things about who I am can inadvertently kind of leave other people behind. And so I'm very excited and anxious and impatient for change and momentum and shift. But I'm not always conscious enough about the people that need to actually do that work. And they're back here and they're wondering what the hell I'm doing. And so I'm working really hard on trying to slow down and to honor their needs a little bit better. And I just hope in the future that I am better. I hope that I'm better for other people. I hope that I'm better for the people I love. I hope that I'm making a difference. And I do hope that I'm still shaking things up a little bit, because I like that.
That's great. I can certainly say, Erin, I know I'm better for having this conversation. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to pop something in the chat for everybody, just to please remind them to follow us on LinkedIn, and a little plug for 2 weeks from now when Kevin Lowe will join us. But we have one final question that came from our prior guest, Iggy Domagalski, the CEO of Wajax. And he left a big question. And that is, what will you do over the next decade to make Canada a better place?
Oh, mercy. Well, I'm graduating upwards of 100 kids every single year who are extraordinary. And I can tell you, every single year, I think I keep watching these remarkable young people walk across the stage and get a diploma. And I think we are in a better place already, because they're exceptional, full of hope, full of promise. They want to see change. They want to impact change. They're just the most remarkable young people. And that gives me hope. So my job is making sure that they have what they need in order to be able to do that. Iggy.
Very cool. Yeah, that was yeah. Well, yeah, bravo, as Lisa says there. So Erin, thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate you. I appreciate the work that we've been able to do with West Island College, and I really appreciate this conversation. A ton of value. Jenny, as always, I appreciate you. You make me a better leader every day, and these conversations are great. And Jenny, last final thoughts to you before we let Erin say goodbye.
You left me speechless. don't do that often.
I know.
Oh, you win. Excellent. And no, that was brilliant. Thank you, Erin. I loved your last answer. I really did. Thank you for being here today and all the wisdom. We truly have pages of notes. I hope the people leaving us do too. Thanks for being here today.
And
It's
Erin,
been a pleasure. Thank you both. And thank you all for joining on a Friday morning. It was a pleasure to chat.
Yeah.
okay. Everybody, have a great weekend. Please cheer hard for the Oilers tonight. And I had to sneak it in sooner or later, Jenny. And we will see you all in a couple of weeks. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
See you, Craig.
Bye-bye.